Welcome back to Historic Investments. Today we're going to talk about some of the very last production P-38s, not standard production guns. There are plenty of videos out there that cover standard production military P-38s. We're going to talk about the very last ditch examples, the ones that Walther was just desperate to assemble and get out to its troops as Germany was collapsing. So if you like what you see, please remember, like and subscribe. Have any questions, please ask. We will do our very best to answer them. The Walther P-38 was one of the most iconic pistols of World War II, whose manufacture began in early 1939 and continued almost till the end of the war in March or April of 1945. During that time, guns were assembled by Walther in Germany, Mauser in Germany, and Spraywerk in Czechoslovakia. Completed guns were routed in one of two directions, either to the German military, which accounted for the vast majority of completed pistols, or to a private or civilian sales. Now, of those 1.2 million guns, again, almost all went to the military. Just under 26,000 were sold privately, and they were available throughout the course of the war, just like Walther PPs and PPKs. The commercial guns were finished in a similar manner to the military guns. Their mechanical specifications were identical, but their markings were different. That included the slide markings and the manner of serialing the parts. So I have, as an example here, a Model HP. The commercial guns were either marked Model HP for Harris Pistol. Let's see if we can cone in on that a little bit right there. Or in the same location, they might have been marked Mod P-38. As most of you are familiar, the military guns would have the serial number right here on the left side of the frame. The serial number would be repeated on the left side of the slide under the barrel and upon disassembly on the locking lug. Commercial guns also had the same 4 parts serial numbered, though the locations were different. For example, obviously the left side of the frame isn't numbered here, nor is the left side of the slide. So let's turn the gun over. And here's where the commercial guns were serialed. Right there on the right side of the frame, you can see serial number 16146. You can also see a commercial proof right there on the front of the slide. You can see that the full serial number here is on the bottom of the barrel. And if we looked internally, we can see that the last few digits are indeed repeated on the locking lug, just as true for the military pistols. So now let's skip forward a few years. The war is going really badly for Germany, and it's pretty clear that the German military is going to need a lot more arms than Walther could possibly supply. So what's the first thing that happens? Well, the commercial sales go. That's it. No more commercial sales after February 1945. The next thing, well, let's scrounge the parts on hand. What do we have? Well, as it turns out, Walther had a couple of thousand frames that had already been serial numbered for commercial production. And these were in the range of 25,700 or 800 to about 27,800. It's about 2,000 frames. Well, even though the guns were not serialed in the proper military locations, at that point, it was just good enough. So what Walther did is it added a 0 in front of the serial number and completed the guns with otherwise unmarked parts. The guns were then finished with the usual markings and inspected in the otherwise normal manner. And these kind of unusually serial numbered guns are now referenced by collectors as the AC-45 Zero Series guns. Again, it's because a 0 had been placed in front of the serial number to get them out of the commercial logbooks prior to their being issued as non-standard, at least non-standard marked military weapons. But were all of the guns in this manner? No, there were a handful, and when I say a handful, I mean 5, maybe 2 handfuls, but probably about 5 guns that were retained by Walther's tool and die shop for further consideration, because of course not only was an effort being made to get as many guns out the door as possible, the other question is, could the basic P-38 design be modified in some way so as to further expedite production? And one of the things under consideration was whether it was worthwhile to eliminate the loaded indicator. And while a loaded indicator is very nice, if you're really desperate to have firearms, that has no role in the actual function of a handgun. So with that in mind, Walther made a handful of what now collectors reference as the solid top P38. We're fortunate enough to have 2 of the 3 known examples in front of us here. We know that at least 2 guns were made with this configuration. This particular example is number 27016. Warren Buxton recorded 27015. And that gun was apparently of identical configuration, i.e. it's a solid top, whose crest was scooped out in this manner. If we take a look here at the other markings on the gun, again you can see here it is, it's marked P38. It doesn't have any of the usual commercial markings. In fact, it doesn't have the usual AC45 legend. So this part is a little bit unusual. You can see the serial number is marked in the commercial manner here. It was taken from all around some other guns that were 0 series guns, but since this one was not issued to the military and remained in Walther's R&D department, there was no need to put a 0 in front of this serial number. The same serial number is marked in full on the barrel. Here it is, 27016. And if we retract the slide, here we go, we can again see here's the number, 27016. In this particular case, the locking block is accepted, but it is unnumbered. One of the interesting things that you can see about this gun is that it does have a hole here for the loaded indicator. However, if you remove the rear sight, it turns out that the hole is only this deep. So clearly the hole does not go through all the way through the slide as in most cases. That part of the channel has been removed. And as you can also tell, the rear sight is nothing like the usual P38 rear sight. This is just in a very shallow, dovetailed, drift adjustable sight. And if you look right here, there's, if you're familiar with the P38 parts, there's a little pin that acts as a firing pin safety, and then there's a spring, and then there's a little disc right here that sits under the rear sight. But in any event, you've got a nice drift adjustable sight, which is a nice added benefit from this configurational change. Well, that is just one option. The other option, of course, I'm going to cone this back down, is to not scoop out the top of the slide. So here is the other, and this is the highest serial number for these R&D guns. This one is 27018. And you can see, I'm going to move this in a little bit more. You can see that in contrast to that other gun, this one has the full crest of the slide intact. Okay, otherwise it's the same. It's interesting that this extractor is Parkerized. That also underscores its very late production. If we cone in right here, we can again see that small disc that was found on the other gun too. That's right under the rear sight. And as true for the previous pistol, you can again see it is partially drilled for the loaded indicator, but again the hole does not extend past this dovetail for the rear sight. And of course, if you look at the front of the slide, see there is no loaded indicator that protrudes from this section. There we go. Now it's nicely in focus. The other thing that I'd like to point out is the military acceptance, because these guns were military tested. All of the experimental guns in this narrow range that I've run across, the 2 here and the other one that I'm aware of, they're all marked with this Eagle 359 right there. You can barely see it. You can also see right here on the barrel. The barrel is also marked with the 359. And if we were to disassemble this gun, and we'll disassemble the next one, you can see that the locking block is also military proofed. So there you have it, a couple of super rare solid top P38s made at war's end in an effort to expedite production. Both of these guns were assembled from commercial frames on hand, whether they were HPs or Mod P38s. The guns were then assembled, tested, military proofed, and remain as a testimony to Walther's very last effort to expedite production and help supply the German forces with additional armament. And here, if you're still paying attention, is a cute short story for you dyed-in-the-wool gun collectors. Something I think you'll appreciate. Many, many years ago, I was aware of this particular solid top P38. I bought it from the collector who bought it from the vet, and he told me that when he purchased the gun, the locking block was mismatched. Well, it bothered him. In fact, it bothered him a lot. So he replaced that locking block with an armorer's blank, and I knew that when I purchased the gun. About 25 years later, this second gun came up for auction. This is numbered 27016, and I was told that it had a mismatched locking block, which was number 18. And I thought this was absolutely amazing because the locking block for this gun was the matching locking block for that gun, which made sense because both guns would have been together in Walther's research facility, and I'm sure there was some testing of interchangeable parts. Well, of course, the first thing I did when I got the two guns together is to put the correct locking block back into the original gun, which gave me an immense sense of satisfaction to bring that gun back to its original configuration as was assembled and tested in the Walther factory. I couldn't do anything, of course, about the blank locking block, which is now in serial number 27016, but so be it. Well, it's just too bad, just really too bad that a collector from so many years ago exchanged and then threw away that original locking block. Well, darn it, but I'm sure if you are as serious a collector as I am, you have similar stories to relate. But on that note, I'm going to call it good.